Subscribe to Wildlife Legends if you believe even the coldest hearts can melt in the warmth of kindness. The sky looked like it was on fire, not from flames, but from a kind of eerie Arctic light that makes everything feel a little too quiet, like the world is holding its breath. I was only a cub back then, barely big enough to walk without stumbling, my white fur still soft, my body still shivering against a wind that cut deeper than any claw ever could. My mother was the only warmth I had ever known, and when she stopped breathing beneath that cracked sheet of ice, the silence became unbearable. I remember nudging her over and over, thinking maybe she was just tired. Maybe she'd wake up. She didn't. The wind didn't care. It roared louder, pushing snow into the hollow where I lay curled beside her, too young to understand the permanence of death, too small to do anything but cry. No one heard me, not the wind, not the sky, not even the stars. And yet someone did. That's the part one still don't understand. Out of all the frozen white silence in the world, someone heard me. It started with the sound of an engine far off in the distance, a noise so alien in the Arctic that it stopped my shivering for a moment. My ears twitched. I couldn't see anything yet, but the sound came closer, cutting through the howling storm like a promise I didn't trust. I crouched lower beside my mother's still body, my heart pounding so fast I thought it would explode inside me. Shapes appeared, blurry at first, moving on the horizon. One of them broke away from the others. Taller than anything I'd ever seen, walking on two legs, wrapped in strange colored fur. It didn't smell like a bear. It didn't look like a seal or a fox. It was something else. A man. He stopped a few feet away from me, slowly removing something from his face. Goggles, maybe. I didn't know what they were called. All I saw were his eyes. They weren't afraid, but they weren't sure either. He didn't move any closer. Just stood there, watching me. I bared my tiny teeth, letting out the smallest growl I could manage, though I knew even then it was useless. I didn't want him near her, this stranger, this thing that didn't belong. But instead of coming closer, he did something strange. He dropped to his knees, gently setting down something on the snow. It was red, soft. It smelled weird, but it was warm. Even from here, I could feel the heat coming off it and the scent of fish that tickled something deep in my brain. I didn't move. Neither did he. We just stared at each other. Two creatures caught in the middle of a world that didn't care if either of us lived or died. I didn't trust him. Not yet. But when the storm came back in full force that night and the cold became unbearable, I had to make a choice. Either die next to the only warmth I had ever known, or crawl toward the one thing that might keep me alive. So I crawled. Every inch of movement hurt. My legs were numb, my paws raw from ice that sliced like blades. But I reached the red thing. I collapsed into it, letting the warmth soak into my frozen fur, breathing in that strange scent of another life. I still didn't look at him. Even though I knew he was still there, I could feel his eyes on me. But he didn't try to touch me. Not that night. I woke up in a box. Not a cage. At least, not the kind with bars. This was soft inside, like a den made of warmth and weird smells. The man was there too, sitting quietly in a corner, watching me. No one else. Just him. I don't know how many days passed. I only remember the sounds. Beeping machines. The smell of oil and warmth. The voice he used when he thought I couldn't hear him. Soft, like the wind after storm. He called me Nanook. I didn't know what it meant, but it became a part of me, just like the man scent, just like his voice. I never let him touch me, not at first. I growled. I snapped. I curled into a ball whenever he came close. But he never got angry, never shouted, never gave up. That was the strangest part. He should have left me. Everyone else had. One night, I woke up shivering again. The power had gone out. The warmth was fading fast. I could hear him moving around, trying to fix it, cursing under his breath. And then, without warning, he took off his coat, laid it over me, sat down beside me in nothing but a thin shirt, teeth chattering. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't just cold. He was risking something. For me, a little half-dead cub who had nothing to offer but silent eyes and a broken heart. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the way his hands shook. Maybe it was because he didn't flinch when I got close. I pressed my head against his side, just once, felt his breath catch, heard him whisper something. "You're gonna make it, little guy." That was the first night I let him touch me. That was the moment everything changed. Because after that, I wasn't just a cub lost in the Arctic. I was Nanook, and someone had chosen to save me. The days that followed blurred together like snowflakes in the wind. Each one quiet, cold, but no longer lonely. His presence became a rhythm, steady and predictable in a world that had once been nothing but chaos. Every morning, he'd come into the shelter where I slept, crouch low so he didn't scare me, and say, "Morning, Nanook." His voice was rough, tired, but there was something in it, something warm, like sunlight through storm clouds. I began to study him the way I had once watched my mother track prey across the ice. He moved slower than us, but there was purpose in every step. When he spoke, it wasn't like growls or yips. It was stories, long strings of sound that I didn't understand but somehow still felt. Sometimes I'd tilt my head just to watch his face move. Other times I'd pretend to ignore him. Even when I was listening to every word, he told me about his home, about cities and lights and machines, about people who wouldn't understand why he was here, risking his life for a bear cub that should have died weeks ago. But he never said he regretted it. Not once. "You're tougher than most things I've met out here," he said one night, gently tossing a frozen fish toward me. "And I've met some things, Nanook." The fish landed by my paw. I didn't hesitate this time. I grabbed it and tore in. Hunger no longer made me weak. It made me sharp. My legs had grown steadier. My coat was thicker now. I was healing slowly. But something else had changed too. I didn't flinch when he touched me anymore. He started building things, small puzzles with ropes and barrels, things I had to figure out to get food. I didn't understand why at first. But then I saw the look in his eyes. Pride. As if every time I solved something, it meant he hadn't just saved me. He'd made me better. And then came the day he opened the door to the outside. I hadn't smelled the wind in weeks. Not the real wind. Not the kind that cut through bone and reminded you that this place didn't care if you lived or died. He stood at the edge of the shelter, waiting, his back to me, arms crossed. He didn't call me, just waited. I padded up beside him, looked out over the endless white, and I stepped outside. The cold hit me like a memory, sharp and sudden, but it didn't scare me anymore. I was different now, stronger, smarter, still small, but not helpless. He walked ahead, slow, deliberate. I followed, each step a test, each breath a challenge. The snow crunched beneath my paws like it used to before everything went wrong. For the first time in weeks, I moved not to escape, not to survive, but because I wanted to. Then something in the distance caught my eye. A shape, white against white, but moving. Too big to be a fox. Too fast to be drifting snow. I froze. So, did he? It was another bear. Not just any bear. A big one. A male. Lone. Hungry. The man raised his arms slowly, not at the bear, but toward me, as if to shield me. I could hear his breath, fast and shallow. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stayed between me and that thing. I had seen what big males did to cubs before. The giant paused maybe 20 feet away, sniffed the air, tilted its head. It looked past the man, straight at me, then its eyes narrowed. I could feel it deciding, was I food? Was I a threat? The man didn't move. I wanted to growl, wanted to run, but he stayed. So I did too. Then the bear did something strange. It grunted and turned away. I couldn't believe it. Neither could the man. He turned to look at me, pale, sweating despite the cold. "He saw you," he whispered, and he backed off. He laughed, not a loud laugh, just a single breath that escaped like steam from his lips. "You're something else, Nanook." That night, he lit a fire outside. Not for warmth. We had the shelter for that. But as a signal, a way to talk to the sky. Maybe. He sat beside it, arms around his knees, watching the flames crackle. I lay nearby, close enough to feel the heat, far enough to pretend I wasn't watching him. "You know," he said after long silence. I came out here to disappear. I didn't plan on saving anything, not even myself. His voice shook, but not from the cold. Something deeper. But then I found you. Or maybe you found me. Doesn't matter anymore. The fire popped, sending sparks into the night sky like tiny stars. He looked at me then, really looked. You saved me too. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the silence that followed. It was the kind that fills up the spaces between broken things, the kind that heals. I got up, crossed the snow, and lay beside him. He didn't move, just smiled. That quiet, tired smile I was starting to know. The wind howled around us, but it couldn't touch us anymore, because now we weren't alone. The storm returned without warning. It wasn't like the ones before. This one was angry. It slammed into the Arctic, like a beast awakened from a long sleep. Winds howled like the cries of ancient spirits, tearing at the shelter, throwing shards of ice like knives against the wood and metal. Snow fell sideways. The world outside vanished into a wall of white. He secured everything, moving with the urgency of a man who had seen storms like this before and knew what they could take. The generators stuttered. The lights flickered. I stayed close, not out of fear, but instinct. I had learned enough to know when the world was trying to swallow us whole. Hours passed, maybe more. Time lost all shape in storms like this. He lit a lantern and sat down near me. His jacket was soaked, the edges rimmed with frost. He looked at me, not with panic, but determination. We'll ride it out, little guy, he whispered. You and me. And we did. When the wind finally slept, it left behind silence, so pure it rang in my ears. The door was half buried, the sky above painted in grays and purples. He pushed it open with effort, stepping out slowly, cautiously. I followed. The landscape had changed. What once was flat was now sculpted into jagged ridges and sudden dips. Tracks were gone, paths erased. It was like nature had pressed a reset button. Then we heard it. A sound carried faintly over the wind, a mechanical hum. Distant, steady, growing louder. He tensed. I could feel it in the way his body shifted, in the breath he held. He turned toward the noise and squinted into the distance. Snowmobiles. He cursed under his breath. I told him not to come looking. 3 dark figures appeared from the white, slow and deliberate. The machines buzzed like angry insects as they approached the shelter. I growled low in my throat. Something about them didn't feel right. Their shapes were bulky, wrapped in too much gear. Their helmets hid their faces. He stepped forward, hands raised. Hey, what are you doing out here? One of them cut the engine and dismounted. His voice crackled through a speaker, cold and clinical. We got a ping from your emergency beacon. He shook his head. I didn't activate it. The man stepped closer. Satellite picked up heat signatures. Multiple, including a bear. The other 2 stayed seated, engines still running. The one on foot now circled, eyes flicking to me. That cub's not your property, he said flatly. He stiffened. He's not property. You know the law. No unauthorized animal rehabilitation without clearance. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. Threats wrapped in control. The man stepped between me and them, just like before. He was dying when I found him. I saved his life. I didn't do this for headlines or grants. I did it because it was right. The speaker crackled again. That may be, but it's not up to you. Then I saw it. One of the men on the snowmobile reaching behind him. Not fast. Casual, like it wasn't a threat. But I felt it in my bones. I lunged without thinking. My paws hit the snowmobile like a hammer. The man cried out, falling backward as I landed on the frozen ground beside him. A warning growl tore from my throat. Not a cub's growl. Not anymore. The engine stalled. The other man jumped off his snowmobile and named something, some kind of stick. The man shouted, "Don't, he's just protecting me." For a second, no one moved. The wind whispered. Then the leader lowered his hand. He stared at me and then at the man. "You got 72 hours, he said finally. After that, he goes to the sanctuary. That's the best we can offer. They left the same way they came, buzzing into the horizon, swallowed by snow. Back inside, he collapsed onto the floor, exhausted, relieved. 3 days, he muttered. 3 days to what? To say goodbye. I curled up beside him. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, finally, "You were ready to fight for me?" His voice cracked. "Guess that makes us even." The next day, something shifted in him. Urgency took hold. He started building again, but this time, it wasn't puzzles. It was something else. Something larger. A sled. Modified. Reinforced. It took hours. He barely ate. Barely rested. "You're not going to any sanctuary," he said to me quietly. "If they think they know what's best for you, they're wrong." By the time night fell, the sled was ready. Supplies packed. Harness tested. We weren't waiting for the 72 hours to expire. We were leaving. He looked at me one last time before we stepped outside. "You still trust me?" I blinked slowly. That was enough. He lit a flare and tossed it behind us. A streak of red fire split the sky. Then we vanished in the Arctic night. 2 silhouettes against a canvas of endless white. Not running. Not hiding. Surviving. Together. The Arctic night is unlike any other. It isn't just dark, it's endless. Like a sky with no ceiling, and no promise that morning will ever come. But that night, as we sped away across the frozen wasteland, the darkness didn't scare me, because the stranger who once stepped between me and death was still by my side. The sled cut across the snow like it had been born to run. He rode it with the skill of someone who had survived winters no human should have. The wind bit into his face, but he didn't flinch. He leaned low, adjusted his grip, whispered words I didn't understand, but I felt their weight. "Hold on, Nanook," he muttered. "We're not done yet." We traveled for hours. No roads, no compass, just stars above and instinct below. He navigated by memory, following ridgelines and frozen rivers I couldn't see. And I ran beside the sled when I could, testing my strength, proving that I was no longer a broken cub. I was something else now. But the cold doesn't forgive for long. And soon it began to win again. Snow started falling, slow and deceptive. It coated everything in silence, in stillness. The sled began to sink into it. Every mile became heavier. His breath turned ragged. His hands blistered. We stopped under a half-buried overhang. He unloaded supplies, fed me, and built a small fire using driftwood from the sled's emergency stash. His eyes scanned the horizon constantly. He hadn't said it, but I knew we were being followed, not by bears this time, by men, by time, by the world that didn't understand us. He stared into flames and finally spoke. "There's an old station about 50 miles from here. Abandoned. Off-grid. They won't find us there. 50 miles. That meant another full day of travel, maybe more, through terrain that wanted us dead." He reached out slowly, pressed his hand against my fur. "I'll get you there," he said, "no matter what." The next morning, the sun barely rose. Just a smear of light behind clouds. He looked worse. His left hand was swollen, frostbite. He wrapped it, tight and clumsy. He didn't complain. Not once. He just kept going. But by midday, he collapsed. The sled tipped sideways into a drift. He didn't move. I nudged him, sniffed, licked his face. Nothing. For the first time in weeks, I panicked. But I didn't give up. I circled the sled, dug into the gear, dragged out a silver blanket he'd used before. I pulled it over him with my teeth, pawing into place. Then I curled up next to him, shielding him with everything I had. The wind screamed across the ice. The night came again, and I stayed awake, watching, waiting, protecting him. When he finally stirred, hours later, his lips were blue, but he smiled. "You stayed," he whispered. Of course I did. He didn't say anything more. He didn't have to. We moved again the next morning, slower now. He was barely conscious, but his hands still clutched the sled's handlebars like they were the only thing keeping him alive. Then, as the sky began to darken once more, I saw it. A tower. Crooked. Rusted. But real. and behind it, a building, half buried, windows shattered, but standing, the station. I barked, loud and sharp. He looked up, saw it too. A flicker of hope crossed his face before it collapsed into the snow. I ran to him, bit gently at his sleeve, pulled. He groaned, but he didn't move. So I did what I had to. I dragged him, inches at a time, across the snow, through the cold, into the station. The air inside was dry, stale, but it was shelter. I found old blankets. I covered him, nuzzled him, and waited. Hours passed. Then his eyes opened. He was alive. "Good boy," he whispered. His voice was thinner now, fragile, but it was still his. He propped himself up, looked around. We made it. And we had. In the days that followed, he repaired the station the best he could, fixed the solar panels, got the old heater running. He even found a satellite transmitter buried in the back room. "We're ghosts now, Nanook," he said, smiling. "They'll never find us here." He taught me more, gave me names for things, showed me how to find fish in the frozen lake outside, how to sniff the wind for signs of danger. I wasn't a cub anymore. I was a survivor, and so was he. We lived like that for weeks, maybe months. Time didn't matter anymore, until the day something changed. A plane, not low-flying, not searching, but circling. He saw it first. His expression hardened. "That's not good." He grabbed his old radio, fiddled with it, listened, and what he heard made his blood run cold. "They're not looking for us," he said quietly. "They're tracking a new group, scientists, coming through this sector." He stared at me. "If they see you, they'll take you. No question." He looked out the window and made a decision. "I have to lead them away." I growled in protest. I didn't want him to go. Not now. Not ever. But he knelt beside me, put both hands on my face. "You gave me a reason to fight again, Nanook. But this is the part where I repay you." Tears filled his eyes. "I'll come back. I swear." And then he was gone, taking only a flare gun, the sled, and enough supplies to survive 3 days. I waited by the door every night. 3 days passed, then 4, then 5. On the 6th night, the flare lit the sky, and I knew he was still alive, still fighting, and he hadn't forgotten me. The flare faded, but its light stayed in my eyes long after the sky swallowed it. I stared into the distance, ears up, heart pounding. He was still out there, somewhere, signaling that he hadn't given up. Not on life, not on me. The Arctic winds howled around the shelter like ghosts, but I didn't feel alone. Not yet. Not while his promise still burned like a coal inside me. I waited. Another night passed. Then another. No flare, no sound, no scent of his return. I paced the narrow rooms of the station, scratched at the door, stared out the frost-rimmed window. Every howl of the wind teased me into believing it might be his voice calling. But it wasn't. Only the empty echoes of silence, over and over again. And still I waited. But the wild doesn't wait. Not forever. A week after the flare, the winds shifted. I caught the scent of men, machines, and something else, fear. Not mine, theirs. It was faint, scattered, like the trail of someone running from something they couldn't understand. I followed it. I ran for miles, my paws hitting snow so fast I barely felt the ground. The air was sharp in my lungs, but I didn't stop. Something pulled me forward. An instinct, a bond that couldn't be broken by distance or time. Then I saw them. 3 humans. Not like him. These ones wore white suits, shiny helmets, and carried boxes that blinked with red lights. They were searching. Not for him, not for me, but for something cold and calculated. Their faces were tense, hands twitching toward weapons. One of them barked into a device strapped to his chest. His words meant nothing to me, but his tone said everything. They were scared, and they weren't alone. Just beyond them, barely visible through the drifting snow, was another figure, limping, weak, but still moving. It was him. He was covered in ice, his coat torn, face bruised, but alive. Barely. One of the scientists shouted. Another raised a gun. I didn't think. I leapt. The snow exploded beneath me as I launched toward them, growling with everything I had left inside me. They screamed. The man with the gun fired. Too late, too wide. I slammed into his chest, knocking him flat, and roared so loud the sky itself seemed to flinch. Then I turned, putting myself between them and the one who mattered. He collapsed into the snow behind me. The others hesitated, guns up, hands shaking. And then he spoke. His voice was broken and hoarse, but it carried through the wind like a command. Don't touch him. Don't. You. Dare. The men froze. For a moment no one moved. Just wind. Breaths. The quiet, terrible stillness of something ancient deciding what would live and what wouldn't. Then one of them lowered his weapon. This is the one, he said to the others. The bear they've been tracking. Another whispered. They said it was dead. He took a step forward. I snarled, low and deep. No, the stranger said. His voice was a whisper now. He's not dead. He's mine. They didn't argue again. They helped him to his feet. Slowly, cautiously. One of them offered him water. Another tried to speak into his radio, but he slapped it out of his hand. I'm not going anywhere without him, he said. One of the scientists tried logic. You understand this animal is tagged, marked, if the organization. I don't care. Silence again. Then something I didn't expect. Respect. In the eyes of the man holding the scanner. He looked at the stranger, not like he was crazy, but like he was someone who'd done the impossible. They didn't take me. Not that day. They left supplies. Medical kits. Food. Even extra gear. And they left him with me. Back at the station, he collapsed the second time, but this time into blankets, warmth, and a silence that wasn't empty. That night, he laughed. A dry, rasping sound that cracked the ice between us. You saved me, he whispered. I blinked slowly, pressed my head against his chest. He held me there. Days passed. The wounds on his body began to heal, and with them, the frostbite in his spirit thawed. We became shadows in the storm. Two beings meant to survive, bound by a story no one would ever believe. Then, something even stranger happened. The scientists returned. But this time they brought cameras. Not weapons. Not traps. One of them, a woman with a face kind enough to trust, filmed us from a distance. She whispered as she did it. They'll never believe this. And maybe they didn't. But they saw it. The footage went everywhere. The cub that had been left to die, and the man who wouldn't let him. People we'd never meet saw our story unfold across their screens. They cried. They cheered. They demanded answers. Some called it a miracle. Others said it was fake. But none of that mattered to us. We were still here, alive, together. But the world doesn't let things stay quiet forever. Weeks later, the woman returned. This time, she held a paper. And a choice. A sanctuary. A real one. Remote. Protected. A place where bears like me could live without cages. And where people like him could help others survive. She offered it to him. And he looked at me. What do you think, Nanook? He asked. You ready for a new kind of wild? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because we both knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning.